Hi, this video is all about the secret behind Terminal Jive, the criminally underrated album released in 1980 by SPARKS. The reason I'm making this video is because it might not be the album you think it is. It takes on a completely new tone if you look at it from the perspective of songwriters writing about songwriting. From that point of view, it becomes an album about having nothing to say. So with that in mind, let's listen to the opening track, which is the fantastic When I'm With You. So we have a character describing his feelings using the most unpoetic language, which really subverts what you'd expect from a love song. I always feel normal when I'm with you. I'm really well adjusted when I'm with you. It's a great setup for the joke that we get in the chorus.
It's the break in the song when I should say something special, but the pressure is on.
Ron Mael of SPARKS has a real gift for writing songs about relationships coming from the perspective of outsiders or losers even. And this looks to be the case here because you've got a main character who's breaking the fourth wall of the song to tell the listeners that he's out of his depth in this relationship. But there's another way of looking at it, and that is from the point of view of the person writing the song. So what I mean by this is the songwriter gets to the point where he should say something special, but he can't think up nothing special, not even a rhyme for the word special. And by saying I can't think up nothing special, that's like intentionally clumsy, much like the unpoetic verses where I always feel normal when I'm with you. I'm really well adjusted when I'm with you. It's kind of subverting the idea of a creative block by expressing it in a really creative way. So it's a song about having nothing interesting to say. And to give further credibility to this idea, you can take track 4 on the album, which is another version of When I'm With You. This time it's instrumental. So they take a song about having nothing to say and they repeat it without words. So this is a song that's always been seen as a bit of a filler track, but it's actually making this really profound joke. Now, this idea can be seen in track 2 as well. So these are the opening words to Just Because You Love Me. Terminal Jive is album number 9 for SPARKS, and up until this point all of their lyrics were nothing less than impeccable. Yet here they deliver a line as uninspired and tepid as baby baby baby, give it to me, give it to me. But that makes sense in the context of When I'm With You. That's a song about having nothing special to say, and on the next song they're saying nothing special. It's a kind of bad songwriting about bad songwriting. So it's done with intent. And Russell seems to express a little bit of distaste for what he's just sang. He says, "Is that all I get? Is that all I get?" So while these first 2 songs sound like they're about a relationship with a woman, it makes more sense if you see them as being about their relationship with their own muse. And at this point in their career, their muse took on the form of disco music. They'd just reinvented themselves a couple of years before. In 1979, they released Number 1 in Heaven and completely changed the band, completely redefined their sound. But it appears that they'd said everything they wanted to say in disco music and wanted to move on to something else. And that's the subject of the next song, which is rock and roll people in a disco world. But before I get to that, I'll just explain the title, Just Because You Love Me. Because while I'm saying that these songs are bad songwriting, they still sound excellent. When I'm With You is one of Sparks' greatest songs. And why? It's because disco music loves them. It's because their style, even when they're not trying, really suits this genre of music. So on to the next song. This is Rock and Roll People in a Disco World. Before digging into this, let's take a look at the title of the album. It's Terminal, as in the end of something, and Jive, which is a dance craze. And for Sparks, this marked the end of their dance phase. This ties neatly to the other songs on side A, which can all be interpreted as being about having nothing to say in the realm of disco music. But the problem was that in 1980, all of the most forward-thinking types of pop music were based around disco music or electronic music. And if Sparks didn't want to operate in this realm anymore, then where could they go? Because if they went back to being a rock band, then this is a step backwards. They speak about rock and roll people with a kind of disdain. They say that they sing A Hard Day's Night by the Beatles, and that was a thing of the past. They sing and play and carry on, which sounds a bit like a band who were just doing it for the sake of it. And in another verse they say that they stage comebacks, and the idea of making a comeback as a rock band at this point just feels wrong to Sparks. They need to find something new. So Rock and Roll People in the Disco World is about the problem that the band now face. Where to go next? And that question is actually answered, because all of side B is about the band trying to find a way forward, and it actually hints to what's to come on the next album, Whomp That Sucker. So with that in mind, let's take a listen to the first song on side B, which is the very creepy Young Girls.
Young girls haven't seen the whole night, and they will hold you, though it might not be tight, and they will kiss you, though it might not be right, 'cause they are young girls. Young girls, I don't care what they say, I want to have you, each and every day, I feel you, I don't care what they say, young girls.
This song is by far the most controversial thing that Sparks have recorded, and it's not hard to see why people might have a problem with it. I mean, it's about an older man who's shamelessly bragging about his attraction to underage girls, and that is pretty bloody horrible. So, many people have put this down to being a product of its time, but the lyrics seem to acknowledge that it's a problematic subject. For example, they use the line, I don't care what they say, and though it might not be right. So why are they writing about this subject that might not be right and is just incredibly distasteful? Well, interestingly, this song addresses age, and that's something it shares in common with many songs around it. For example, the next song after this is called Noisy Boys, and that addresses young men. And the song before it, Rock and Roll People in the Disco World, addresses old men. They sing A Hard Day's Night, a thing of the past, and they're as high as kites, like hippies, and hippies were well out of fashion in 1980. And then there's the opening song of the follow-up album, which is Tips for Teens, and that's a song where an adult is dishing out the worst advice to teenagers. So again, you've got a grown-up interfering in the lives of children in an inappropriate way. Not nearly as inappropriate as on this song, to be clear, but they are very similar topics. So why are they doing this? Now, let's assume for a minute that Sparks haven't just chosen to write about such a perverted subject for the sake of it. And like other songs on this album, let's look at it from the point of view of songwriting, specifically songwriting for young girls. So rather than it being a twist on a love song, it's a comment on the new audience that Sparks are writing music for, because they've decided to leave the disco audience behind. They don't want to go back to their old rock audience. So to add a bit of weight to this, let's take a look at the second verse. In this verse, they deal with language. They use small little words to sing about small little words. So yeah, let's give it a listen.
I like their talk, small little words. I like their style, less of the guile. They're straight with you. Don't analyze. Don't analyze. You seem too much. I like the touch of young girls, of young girls.
This all works on two levels. First of all, you've got the man who is exploiting the naivety of young girls. They're just not old enough or sophisticated enough at this point to see through what he's doing, and he's really happy with that. But then you've got an exploration of the language used by young girls, and that same language is used to write this song. So what I mean by this is they sing, I like their talk, short little words. And that's all over the record, because the opening line to the song is, I like their arms, I like their legs. It's really, really basic. It's kind of like a prepubescent girl's idea of what a love song should be. They then sing, I like their style, less of the guile, they're straight with you. And this too can be about songwriting, because guile is a kind of cunning. And Spark songs before this always had a lot going on under the surface. You'd listen to a Spark song and you might not understand what it's about on the first listen or the second listen, but after poring over the lyrics sheets, it all comes to light. They were really sophisticated songs, whereas on Whomp That Sucker, things were a lot more simple. You could understand what a song was about on the first listen. For example, you've got a song about marrying a Martian. You've got another song about a male model who yearns to be ugly. They're all songs that you don't need to analyse. So what I'm saying here is Whomp That Sucker is an album for children. And the meaning of young girls, and tips for teens for that matter, is an exploration of what it means for older men to write songs intended for a young audience. It's a joke about the morality of that. This whole idea is built on in the next song, which is Noisy Boys.
Whistling breeze and the sound of the rain on the awning. Candlelight music, the sound of the leaves in the air. And all of that makes me feel nervous. I know it's part of your life. Once in a while I just gotta be right. You know it ain't nothing personal, babe. But noisy boys are happy boys. Let it out, get it crashing. Noisy boys are happy boys. Let it out, get it smashing.
This song takes the band one step closer to defining the sound of Whomp That Sucker, because on the previous song they'd made music for children, but this took the form of a kind of easy listening love song, and the romantic imagery found in Young Girls carries over to the start of Noisy Boys. They sing about a whispering breeze and the sound of rain on an awning, candlelight music, the sound of leaves in the air, and that isn't the sound of Sparks. So they say all of that makes me feel nervous. And if you think about it, Whomp That Sucker was a far more edgy and juvenile record, and that's what they're setting up here. They're saying noisy boys are happy boys, so Sparks are happy when they're fun and juvenile and silly, and that's exactly what we get on the follow-up album. Let's move on to the penultimate song now, and this is about the musical directions that are available to Sparks: rock and roll or disco music.
Make your choice and that is that. Live with her and don't look back. Easy, simple, tidy, ultra clean. Not with me, I don't know why. To the left and to the right. Good things come from more than just one side. In stereo, stereo, stereo.
As ever, there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, it can be seen as a song about a relationship. A guy is making the choice as to whether to stay with his current girl or to move on. The line is, make your choice and that is that, live with her and don't look back. But he's not interested in the easy choices. He says good things come from both sides, and that is likening his options in the romantic world to stereo. And then the production of the song makes great use of stereo, with Russell's voice panning left and right over the speakers. So there's a kind of synchronicity between the words of the song and the meaning and the production of it, and in that sense it's similar to something like The Rhythm Thief, where they sing "Where did the groove go?" just as the groove disappears from the music. It can also be seen as about the choice to move away from disco music. You could describe this as simple, easy, tidy, ultra clean, like Russell does in the music, and it should be an easy choice because for any other band it would be obvious. In 1980, when this came out, disco music, or music derived from that, was everywhere. It was huge. It was the most popular genre of music. But then they sing "Not With Me, I Don't Know Why, Stuck With Too Much Paradise." So it's not an easy choice with Sparks, but they've got all these great options. They could make a classic disco record, or they can go back to rock music. And we know how that played out. So, speaking of that move to rock music, the last song on the album is a celebration of that. So let's move on now to the album closer, which is The Greatest Show on Earth.
Bring together everyone for one big show. The four tops, mop tops, Boston pops and Oslo. 500,000 people pushing and the crowd says go. But I'd be up in my apartment with the greatest show.
So again, this sounds simple enough until you start pulling at this thread, because you've got this guy who sees his new girl as being the greatest show on earth, and in the verse I just played, he gets a chance to go to a concert, and this is a huge concert. To many, this would be the greatest show on earth. There are 500,000 people watching and they're primed and ready to go, but he shuns it and decides to spend the night with this girl instead. The lineup for the concert is really interesting because all the bands represent mass appeal. You've got the Four Tops and the Mop Tops, who are the Beatles, making their second appearance on the album. You've got the Boston Pops, which is like a popular version of orchestral music, and Art LeBeau. He was a DJ. He coined the term oldies but goodies. So it's all about established mass appeal pop music. And here, the guy is making a choice not to be a part of that. It's like he's walking away from mass appeal. That's comparable to where Sparks were. Because if they'd have continued down the road of electronic music, well, their sound really suited that style. and they could easily have been as big as Soft Cell or Depeche Mode or Erasure or Pet Shop Boys, these bands that were having huge hits. Instead, they made a conscious decision to walk away from that, and instead they moved to America, where they did this very niche rock music, and it was almost exclusively made for California teenagers. They only toured California, they only promoted the music to those people. Meanwhile, other bands had huge successes with ideas pioneered by Ron and Russell Mael. And the chorus of the song even acknowledges that this is a difficult choice. Think about the price that Sparks had to pay to make an album like Whomp That Sucker instead of Number One in Heaven Part 2.
She's the greatest show on earth tonight and every night. And she's worth it even when you gotta pay a heavy price. 'Cause she's the greatest show on earth tonight and every night. And she's worth it even when you gotta push and shove and fight.
This guy has no problem in paying a heavy price in order to be with the greatest show on earth. And in the context of a concert that featured music which is the epitome of mass appeal, then maybe the greatest show isn't the one that sells the most records. It's whatever Sparks decide to turn their hand to next. They keep on pressing a big reset button in their career, and the appeal to them is finding a new audience and a new scene and a new sound, and leaving behind whatever they've just done, even if that sound is taking over the world. It's a kind of unflinching artistic integrity where making money is never the order of the day, and in fact maybe they're actively put off by fame. Maybe it's something that they consider damaging. I hope what I've shown in this video is every song gives a little bit of information as to why Sparks wanted to move from disco to this kind of fun juvenile rock music that they took on. The songs sound completely unrelated to each other, but each one acts as a kind of allegory for what they're doing, and the songs can tell you more about the Mael brothers' thought processes than any number of interviews ever could. It's all there in the music. But the crazy thing here is that if Sparks really were steering away from commercial success towards some kind of niche market, then what doesn't add up is that the album wasn't a success. Terminal Jive, despite being disco, despite being this genre that was taking over the world, was a failure, and a lot of the reasoning for that comes from Sparks themselves, because even people who champion the record see it as a bit of a failed project. Ron and Russell claimed that Georgio Moroder produced the project but wasn't really interested. He delegated some of the recording duties onto Faltermeier. His role was selecting songs. Ron came to him with 10 songs and 9 of them were discarded, keeping only When I'm With You. But something really doesn't add up, because the thing about Terminal Jive is these songs are fantastic. There are several potential hit records, but for whatever reason the album faltered. All except the one song, of course. When I'm With You is one of the biggest songs of their career, and it was only a success in France. And I think there's a good reason for that. It's because they only promoted it in France. They were over there for months, and at no point did they choose to hop on a cross-channel ferry and promote the record in Britain, and that was a place where they were pretty much household names at this point. Interestingly, after playing a UK gig in 1975, they didn't return to the country until 1994, so that's the best part of 20 years without revisiting the market where they had the most success, and that doesn't make any business sense whatsoever. But if they weren't interested in fame, then that sheds a whole new light on this album. There are things in the album that seemed designed to put people off. The worst lyrics on the album are on the second song, and that appears to be about having bad lyrics. They've got the instrumental version of When I'm With You. That feels like it's a filler track, but as I explained earlier, it's a song about having nothing to say, repeated, and this time with even less to say. Then there's Young Girls, which is catchy as hell, but makes the listener think of paedophilia, and who wants that? So what if all of this is by design? What if Terminal Jive was designed to commercially be a failure, but artistically to soar? To go back to the title of the album, is terminal as in the end, and jive, which is a dance craze, so it's the end of the disco phase. But jive means something else as well. It means to be foolish or to deceive people. And in the name of art, I think this is what Ron and Russell have done with this almost perfect pop album. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please like and subscribe and comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and share it about if you could. And I've also got a blog which is worth a visit if you're interested in these alternative readings of what Sparks are doing. So I hope to see you all soon. Thanks. Bye.